This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Don't miss a minute of football season. Join us in the sports book with a tailgate party on October 27th. Visit HollywoodCasino.com to see how you can reserve your package. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The great John Leguizamo writes and stars in his world premiere play, The Other Americans, at Arena Stage in Washington, D.C., now through November 24th. I spoke to the prolific actor, playwright, and comedian about his greatest works, from Carlito's Way to Freak to Moulin Rouge, as well as his iconic animated voices in Ice Age and Encanto. That's right, we're gonna talk about Bruno. Hey, John Leguizamo, hey, thank you so much for joining us here on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. What a blast.
Oh, this is an honor. You've been a part of so many great roles throughout our entire lives, and you just keep them going. So it's going to be great. This time we're talking about The Other Americans, now at Arena Stage, now through November 24th, and I have so much I want to ask you about it, thematically, everything. But hit us with the basic premise really quick of who Nelson Castro is. Just give us the basic setup, then we can dive into it.
Sure. It's about a Latin family in 1998, New York City. Long Island, moving up, trying to chase that American dream, and something horrific happens to the family, and then they got to grapple with this thing that happened to their son, and then they try to survive it, but the family dismantles.
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds like his son, Nick, is just getting back from a mental wellness facility after a traumatic incident. So there's a lot of things going on under the surface that are revealed as well.
Yeah. From what the audiences are saying, the feedback is beautiful. We had a veteran, this woman who came in and said that the show was, well, thank you for the show because it was very healing for her. And I didn't totally understand the impact of the show. I thought it would trigger people as opposed to release, be cathartic. So that's fascinating to know that, because there have been a few people who came who had similar incidents to what happens to the family. And I thought they wouldn't be able to stand it. And then they felt stronger for release, because they release during the show. There's a lot of wailing and things that are happening in the show, because the show is a difficult piece. I used Romeo and Juliet's paradigms. The first half of Romeo and Juliet is comical, and the second half is a tragedy. So that's kind of what I did with this. This is an American tragedy.
Wow. Well, so modeling it after Shakespeare, you can't get any better than that.
Right. Some of the best story structure in the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a reason people keep returning to it. Awesome. Well, yeah. So I want to underscore that for our listeners. I mean, not only are you starring in it, but you actually wrote this too. So is it different acting in something you wrote? Like, I guess on the one hand, it's probably easier to remember the lines. You wrote them, but on the other side of the coin, I guess like it's probably more challenging because you're your own worst critic. Are you like tempted to amend it every time you do? You know what I mean? Like, talk about sort of
absolutely.
that dichotomy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I always want to fix everything daily, which is what I do with my one-man show. So yeah. I'm no stranger to doing my own writing, performing my own writing, because I've done 6 one-man shows on Broadway. So I'm used to that. But now I have a whole cast. And then, if you change certain lines, it does mess people up. and myself, I'm not as young as I used to be. So it's a little trickier. My memory's not as agile as it used to be. But writing this piece, I wanted to start creating a Latin canon of classics, of American classics, because unfortunately, especially in New York City, where I'm from, we're equal to the white population, but we live like a parallel shadow life, because you would not know that we were equal to the white population in size.
Right.
You would think we were just a tiny little minority, but we're not. Exactly. But you don't, when you look at the New York Times, New York Post, New York Magazine, the New Yorker, you don't see staff names that are Latino. You don't see stories. You don't see headlines. And so it's like a cultural apartheid. So that's why I wrote this play, mostly because I live in that city and I'm horrified by our lack of presence, especially on Broadway. I mean, Lin-Manuel can't be the only great
Right,
Latino New York playwright.
right.
I can't be the only Latino comic of New York City. J-Lo can't be the only Latina singer. Cardi B can't be the only Latina rapper. I mean, no, it's not. There's millions of us in New York with talent. It's impossible to get through the gatekeepers.
Right. It's not reflective of the, I mean, you're listing the big, breakthrough exceptions to, but it can't, it's not reflective of and representative of the actual population.
No,
And
no.
that's in entertainment and across the board and in culture in general, which I guess sort of leads to my next question. Like to do this, I mean, you're talking about New York City, but to do this at Arena Stage in the heart of the nation's capital, that's why I mean, they do such powerful work on
Wow.
timely topics of immigration and et cetera over the years. We've interviewed Molly Smith and the new artistic director now over the years. But to be able to do this in a place where you may actually have actual lawmakers, actual judges sitting in the audience
Yeah.
at a time of, gosh, I mean, I'll just go ahead and say it, but like just slander against the Haitian immigrants and eating the dogs and this lies and these lies. And well, in this case, they actually are legal. But even to me, even the phrase illegals and aliens, there's such, these terms are meant to dehumanize folks. And it is
Yes.
just ridiculous. But anyway, speak on how our politics and the current political debate that literally the election's about to happen of how doing this in DC, it's just important.
No, it's very powerful, man. And just like you were saying, Trump's demonization of mostly Latinos, because when he's talking about immigrants and illegals, he's not the euphemism, yeah, right, is we're talking about Latinos. And unfortunately now some Haitians, but Haitians are Latino as well. But yeah, I mean, it causes huge amounts of hate crimes. They're not go unreported as most of Latin events go in this country, and it's horrific what it does. It dehumanizes us, saying that we're damaging the blood, that it's in our genes to
Yeah.
to be criminals. I mean, he takes everything out of Hitler's playbook. I mean, he's quote for quote. It's
Mhm.
disgusting, man. So yeah, it's
And the last time around was build the walls. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? And
He
Muslim
finds
bans.
the people to demonize and to
Yeah.
circle around his campaign of hate, hate mongering and fear mongering, because that's how he stirs up his support group. But I'm here in DC, and obviously we both know that they're on recess since September. So, but they're coming back November 5th. So I'll have 3 weeks with them, and yeah, they're all promising to come and see the show. I already had the highest ranking Latino Navy admiral, Carlos Torres, which was incredible to have him here. And he said the piece was so important because he deals with about 400 cases of suicide per year since COVID. And that a show like this is important to talk about mental health.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't wait for them to come here and all these incredible politicians. And this is the city where decisions are made that are
Yeah.
important and have gravitas.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know I was kind of revealing my politics with you, but I guess I have to say, we do have Republican and Democrat listeners to this show, and that will come to Arena Stage. Obviously, different lawmakers or hopefully both sides of the aisle will come to your show and maybe
Mm.
be held and changed like great entertainment does.
Right.
But I guess I want to say is there was a bipartisan bill that got tanked because they thought, you know what I mean? So like I'm not trying to, gang up on one side or the other, but I just think that the Trump stuff, I have to call it out because it's so outside the normal
Right.
left right. You know what I mean? Let's come up with common sense solutions. Don't
Right.
demonize and the hate filled is what scares me. So
No,
uh
that's a great point. I mean, yeah, we have to have but we have a two-party system, so there needs to be respect and compromise, and that's the only way a democracy can function. But when we don't hold the same truths to be real, you can't have a democracy. If you say it's day and I say it's night, how can we ever meet? How can we ever compromise? We're not talking about the same facts. We're not talking about the same reality.
Right. We both have to be like, acknowledge, okay, the fact is it's day or it's night right
Right.
now. And then we can talk about, the nuance, whatever size of government or
But if
whatever you
somebody's
want to
making
talk
up
about,
all kinds
policy.
of lies
Yeah.
and he's not being held accountable and he's not being fact checked, then you're just spewing out he's a pathological liar. I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, it's unprecedented. He's unfit to be president. Now I'm revealing my politics. but a really important time to be voting. I mean, obviously, I already voted. My whole cast has voted. My whole family is voting. I think my wife already cast her absentee ballot as well. Early voting. All my family, my cousins, my aunt, my brother, yeah, everybody.
Awesome. Well, thanks for contextualizing it into. We talked about what the play itself is about, but like I think it was important to contextualize why you're doing it in DC at this time in the run
And
up.
I performed November 5th. I'm on stage November 5th. After
You're
you
on that
vote, you
night.
can come and see the show.
Is that why you are? Is that why you did the early voting? Because you know not going to be able to day of.
Exactly, exactly.
That's
I did the
fantastic.
absentee because I knew I couldn't get to New York and early voting. Because yeah.
That is fantastic. Well, that's because the work continues. You're pounding that pavement in DC. You're doing it then literally the day of the election. That's great. All right. Well, we can circle back, and wrap it full
Mhm.
circle it back to the show in the end. But whenever I have like a legend, you are in my mind, you are a legend of
Oh,
entertainment.
thank you,
So
buddy.
like whenever I have someone on, like I love to sort of remind folks, how you got into it to begin with. And I know you were born in Columbia,
Yeah.
not Columbia, Maryland, folks. Columbia, South America, the legit in the early '60s. But I guess like at what age 3, your family moved to Queens, New York, I guess.
Yeah.
So who were your, acting or comedy, because you can do both, heroes growing up, either here in the States or any throwback from Colombia that never get the limelight?
Yeah, I mean, I came here when I was 3 years old, 2.5, and my brother was like one, and we came to Queens, Jackson Heights, because there was a large Colombian population, and then a very large Latino population in Queens, New York, in the '60s, and yeah, I had a lot of different comedy heroes growing up. New York television was amazing, so yeah, it was Abbott and Costello. Uh, Oliver
Hang on, you
Hardy.
just mentioned that I just talked to Costello's daughter like 2 days ago
Wow.
about Meet Frankenstein. We did like a Halloween thing, but that's insane. We talked for like an hour, and that's
That's
wild. That's
amazing.
wild. You would shout out Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, come on, Abbott and Costello, uh, Oliver Hardy,
Yeah,
the Marx Brothers,
yeah.
Martin and Lewis, Lucille
Just
Ball, and then there were some incredible, great Latin like Cantinflas. I mean, Cantinflas was Mexican, but he in the '50s, but he influenced all of Latin comedy because he was verbal, physical, satirical, political, sticky, slapsticky. He did it all, man. I've never seen a comedian embrace it all like that. It was incredible how he. So that I took a little bit of that. So I feel like I've changed American comedy by adding more pain, more sexuality, more. I took it further. I just took it further instead of keeping it all in one plane. I got political. I got social political. I talked about domestic violence in comedy. I started pushing American comedy with Mambo Mouth, Spectrama, Freak to
yeah.
levels that had never been pushed.
Yeah, and I want to get into Freak and all of that stuff in a minute, but I'm in the sake of trying to move somewhat chronologically, which is always can be tricky, but so those are your idols growing up, and then so you studied theater what briefly at NYU, but pretty quickly we're like I'm gonna do stand up, like so what early clubs around New York or elsewhere would you credit with sort of breaking you? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
but
Like
no, dude, I studied hard. I studied
yeah,
with some of the great acting teachers, man.
yeah.
I studied with Lee Strasberg. I studied with
Woo, Hyman
Uta
Roth.
Hagen, Herbert Berghoff, Ken Yulo, David Gideon, Bill Esper Studios. I did a little Meisner technique.
Woo,
So yeah, I love my craft, man.
yeah,
And all the great actors that I admire, Brando, Pacino, De Niro, all studied hard,
yeah,
and James Dean,
yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I did study hard, and then, I always loved comedy. So I started going to the comic strip, started going to Catch a Rising Star, Rodney Dangerfield's. I was in a sketch comedy group. I was in an improv group that Robin Williams used to frequent called First Amendment downtown on Bond Street. And then I started doing my one man stuff, at all the performance art spaces that were available to me. It was a beautiful time in New York City. I mean, New York City was incredible in the '70s, '80s. I mean, it was amazing. It was such a fertile, creative place because it was bankrupt and everything was affordable. and every artist in America and the world came to New York City to make their mark. That's why it was the birth of punk, the
Right.
birth of rap, the birth of disco, the birth of all these Sam Shepard, David Mamet. They all came to New York. All these great playwrights and poets and musicians and hip hop culture. Rap was born in New York, and break dancing and graffiti. It was New York was incredible, man. So I am so lucky to have been raised in this amazing city.
And the ultimate, that the Beacon Statue of Liberty is there for a reason, is the ultimate melting pot of all these cultures coming out. You know what I mean? And it births such beautiful art. So I'm with.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, that was the beautiful thing about New York. It was every ethnic group in the world was represented.
Yep.
And it enriched my life, man. It made me so much better. My Jewish brothers and sisters, Black, Haitian, Jamaican, Latinos from every country, white people from every European place in the world,
yeah,
Russians.
Italians coming in. Yeah, everybody. It's everybody. It's amazing. It's absolutely, to me.
My Asian brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
LGBTQ plus. It was an amazing, amazing creative cradle civilization of America.
Exactly. And that's why it 9/11 and etc. That's why it gets attacked from people who don't like, don't like diversity. But I remember after that, now I'm tangenting, but I remember, it was like, oh, we're all New Yorkers, but there's because of this diverse spirit you're talking about. Like for a second, America was like, yes, that's what we're about, and then we forgot it, sadly. But anyway, all right, cool. So that's thank you for listing, Lee Strasberg and all. Thanks for listening to your craftsman before and then the stand up, because you're right, man. You've got the chops to go with it. So that's like the early theater and stand up. But then I guess what 93-ish is like the big breakthrough year for you, at least in Hollywood. I know you've done a couple small parts before.
Right.
But in one year you get, your Luigi to Bob Hoskins Mario in Super Mario Brothers, which I know the movie itself, didn't do as well, but it launched you.
But it's a classic. It's a classic now.
It's like a cult classic, right? Hey man, that's what I grew up on. But the same year, that's like a mainstream kind of movie. And then the same year you do like a really art filmmaker, Brian De Palma, man. Carlito's Way as Benny Blanco from the Bronx.
Oh my God. One of the great American directors.
Oh my God. And
Master.
That documentary he did where it was like De Palma and De Palma or something to watch.
Oh, yeah. Noah Baumbach.
Yeah, I think it was just called De Palma.
Documentary.
Yeah. But you hear him talk about Sisters and Obsession and Carrie and the figure eight shot and Carrie and Dress to Kill and Blowout and the split diopters and Scarface.
And how about the amazing scene he calls it the subway ballet in Carlito's Way, that 10-minute scene in the subway that took 2 days to film. Mapped out. He maps it all. He draws everything. And when I did Casualties of War, I got to see his shooting all his drawings. He draws himself every shot, and then we rehearsed for weeks. It was incredible. His process is it's a very old school process of really putting the work in there and really testing it all out before you get on set.
I thank you that's exactly what the sequence I was going to ask you about from Carlito's Way. It is legendary stuff, and to be there with Pacino, and you listed him as one of your idols coming up, so that must have been absolutely incredible.
Oh, it was incredible, man, to be with him. Going head toe to toe and being I was improvising like crazy, and he was cool. He didn't know what he was up against, the poor man. I was improvising. I was like, this is my chance to make my mark in America, and I'm not going to shut up. And then De Palma loved it, so he let me be a maniac. I made up all the dialogue in Carlito's Way. It's just me improvising like crazy.
That is, it is a classic, and I was gonna say underrated classic, but I think it's rated. People recognize.
People love it. People love it. Italian people get upset with me. They go like, "Hey, why'd you have to kill him for? He was gonna get away." I go, "Yo, it's not a documentary. It's fantasy."
That's my payback for him doing Tony Montana.
Right.
It's just a great movie. All right. And then of course after that, I guess you get a Golden Globe nod as the drag queen Tu Wong Fu in '95.
Yeah, we didn't get the Oscar noms we deserved, because Patrick deserved the Oscar nom, and so did Wesley.
Yeah.
But Priscilla beat us. We were in a race to beat Priscilla.
Yeah.
But our director was pregnant, so we had to stop shooting for a couple months. So they beat us, and then they got all the acclaim, and we became like the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah, well, awards are awards, and it's the work that lives on. So
Yeah. Thank you for putting the perspective.
yes, but you do start getting some nominations and some wins for Freak. Let's go into Freak. So you get two Tony nominations on
Mm.
Broadway for Best Play and Best Actor for you, and then when Lee joins you and films it for the film version, I guess you get some Emmy nominations for Variety Special in your performance. So just
Well, I won
memories of,
Emmy. I got two Emmy noms and I won one.
and you won one for
Yeah,
the this filmed version with Spike
yeah,
Lee. So hat tip to Spike, another New Yorker. There we go. We keep
yeah,
returning.
yeah, yeah. Super
But
talented man.
yeah, man, Sal's Pizza. Put some brothers on the wall. But anyway, Freak. Tell me about putting that together versus the Broadway version, and then working with Spike. Like, what's the juxtaposition of both those experiences?
Well, just going to Broadway with it, was wild because the sexual content, the child abuse
Hmm.
question, not sexual, but physical violence,
Hmm.
domestic violence. I mean, and nobody had ever done that. And all the, I started all that jizz comedy before Something About Mary and before
Was that hair
American
gel? No, that
Pie.
was you first.
Yeah, that's right. Because they were there. They were in the house. I saw the Whites brothers. They were there. So I know, American Pie. I was already doing it on stage. I don't know if Philip Roth was the first though,
Yep.
but I was the second. Imaginary penis and putting it in sandwiches and putting it in, whatever. So yeah, and it was in a way nobody had ever really. I mean, one man shows before that were really about, they were doing Mark Twain and young Lincoln. Nobody was doing a story about themselves, about
Right.
their lives, on Broadway.
Autobiographical, yeah.
Yeah, autobiographical on Broadway about yourself. And me being a Latin kid from Jackson Heights, it was like, what?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
So, but I think I'm a powerful storyteller, and I think that's what broke through to everybody.
Hmm.
That the way I rap pain and trauma and made it funny at the same time and still gripping. You left the place shaken and shook. So I think that's what the groundbreaking I was able to do with Freak on Broadway, and then Spike filmed it beautifully. And this is, Spike also taught me how to be a filmmaker because he allowed me to go into editing room, and I'd never been invited to editing room for the major director. I'd done it with my student films, student
Right.
filmmakers. That's how I got really my starting film was in student films in NYU, and they would take me through the whole process, which was incredible. But
Yeah.
Spike allowed me back into there, and he let me hang out with Bobby Brown, his great, incredible, illustrious editor for decades. And I was able to reshape it and do all these things that he approved of. And I was like, wow, I've never had this kind of power over a project. It was incredible how generous he was and how confident he is in his skill set. Takes a lot of confidence to do that.
Unbelievable filmmaker, and he had just been coming off of Malcolm X and Crooklyn and
Oof.
Clockers and all that. Like, this needs saying more. I mean, we've mentioned De Palma and Spike, and you're getting to sort of pick their brains through all this. Well, so I got to bring up another one. Then in this period, Baz Luhrmann. I mean,
Oh, wow.
another amazingly genius filmmaker who is
Brilliant.
another
One
voice
of the greats.
all of his own.
I've gotten to work. I've been a lucky man, I've gotten to work with some of the greats.
Yeah.
Brian De Palma, Tony Scott, Ridley Scott. I mean, you name it. Brad Furman, I think, is also brilliant. Yeah, some greats, Dennis
Spike.
Lehane recently, some amazing story. David Kep, great writers, great writers.
Specifically, Baz. I mean, I know you're in Romeo and Juliet, which you said inspired the other Americans structurally, but you're in the adaptation as Tybalt. So basically, the Bernardo from West Side Story, that's Tybalt. And then Henry in Moulin Rouge.
Lautrec.
Yeah, there you go. I'm glad you said it. But that's for some reason when they this interview pitch, like, I don't know why that's the first role that came to my mind. But I just love Baz's, like, just talk about his ability to, like, recontextualize pop culture. The Elephant Song medley. He takes all old songs to create new pop culture. He's like a master at that.
Yeah, because I mean, before him, nobody was doing these jukebox musicals. Nobody.
Right.
He's the progenitor of jukebox musicals, for better or for worse.
Yes.
But he did it brilliantly in Moulin Rouge, taking all these pop songs and turning the whole thing into a musical, telling the story of Toulouse-Lautrec and all the people during the Montmartre creativity of Impressionism in the late 1800s in France. And we did a month of rehearsals. We were trained in singing, dance. I had to learn how to do. We all used English accents for French, stand in for French. So we had all this coaching. We read the script was like 280 pages the first time we read it. Then
Yeah.
he cut it down and pared it down, and we would do readings of it every Friday. It was like an incredible, like creative boot camp.
It's unbelievable, and thanks for the songs you're referencing and everything, because yeah, like I no one had those jukebox musicals would take off, right around that, right shortly after that. But this is people got to remember, this is 2001. This is why.
Before Glee,
Yeah,
Glee is basically taking everything from Moulin Rouge.
exactly. This is, I mean, that's why to me it's one of those seminal musicals, not just
Yes,
rapping
well,
and
the
rapping.
musical had all failed after Grease was the last successful musical in
Yeah,
America in
that's
Hollywood.
78.
Right, but then Moulin Rouge was the next
Yeah.
successful one in
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah, it comes out in 2001, and then lo and
Yes.
behold, Chicago wins the next year, 2002. But I always remind people, nah, nah, nah. It starts with
Yeah,
Moulin Rouge,
yep.
and then you get Dreamgirls and the rest.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's
yeah. You
Moulin
get
Rouge.
all those musicals, yeah, and
Yeah,
every musical
and
since.
who knew Nicole Kidman and especially Ewan McGregor could sing like that? Like, what is that? Elton John's "Your Song" when
Yeah,
Elton goes, "If they're green or they're blue," and Ewan goes, "If they're green or they're blue." I can't do it, but his version's in my head.
yeah. And I sang the opening song.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Oh, you
the
opened the
the
thing
the
with the
Nat King
windmill and the
Cole Nature Boy. I sang that. That's my voice. As weird and bizarre as my voice is, it works. At first, I was like, "Oh God, this is horrific."
it
And then
worked.
now with age, I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of beautifully haunting, bizarre." Yeah.
It is bizarre, and the Baz's camera's like flipping upside down through the windmill. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, through the miniatures, all
Yeah,
these
miniatures.
incredibly beautifully done miniatures.
Yeah, yeah, it's incredible. Well, I want to hit some of your animated roles too, because you're Sid the Sloth to so many generations of kids now in Ice
Yeah.
Age in 2002. And I want to get to Encanto in a second. I think that's like the big masterpiece. But remember, real quick, voicing Sid the Sloth, just a great comic relief role. That's like a Robin Williams style role, man. It's so fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I loved it, man. I love Sid. It started out as a drama, except I was the only comic relief, and it started out with Ben Stiller and Philip Seymour Hoffman, rest in peace,
Mhm.
and ended up with Ray Romano, the great Ray, who's
Yeah,
hilarious,
I love Ray.
and Dennis Leary. Yeah, and then became this incredible family comedy that kids grew up with. When I mean, a lot of dads come up to me and go, "Can you do your voice?" I go, "I'm going to freak out your kids. They're not used to seeing this face with that." And I go, "All right," and I do it, and I'm like, "Hi, kids, how's it going? How's that?" And they're like, because they recognize the voice, but they're
Sid.
like, "You don't look like that cute little creature, you old guy."
Oh, it's hilarious. It's a classic. And then yes, as mentioned, and this is fast forwarding several years, but while we're talking animated, I mean, they say we don't talk about Bruno, but you were Bruno Madrigal. You were part of the family Madrigal in Encanto, and to me, the pivotal family member because. I mean, I'm sitting there. My wife and I will never forget. We're watching this, during I guess it was during COVID time.
Yes, it was. It came out during
Yeah,
COVID.
yeah. And so we're watching this character, Bruno. You're in the walls, literally watching this family eating dinner without him through these holes in the wall. I mean, talk about the genius of these deep themes. It's like I've never seen an animated movie tackle like generational trauma like that. Like Bruno is like
I
outcast,
know.
is this black sheep, but was really just like, hey, family, like there's issues we got to talk about, and the family's like, no, we don't want to talk about it. Too many families. That's how the old generation dealt
Yeah,
with it. Pretend the
yeah.
problems don't exist, but talk about how your character in that movie was calling that out for like maybe hopefully the next generation is we are going to talk about Bruno.
Right, right. Well, I mean, families still sweep it all under the rug because it's
Yeah.
the only way to function with sometimes the trauma is just to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And yeah, this family's running away from a revolution at the top, and then all this generational trauma and neglect. It's incredible how it dealt with all these amazing issues. I mean, it was a brilliant, writers and directors, Jared Bush, Cherise Castro-Smith,
From
and
this,
Lin-Manuel, of course,
yeah,
and the music,
of
the
course.
amazing genius that is Lin-Manuel. I mean, and I just had an amazing time, and we improvised, and we got to create these characters, and I really enjoyed this weird sort of outcast guy
Yeah.
who's very creative but not allowed to be part of the family. I'm hoping that the sequel is going to be we only talk about Bruno.
It should be. I mean, yeah. I mean, I mean, and you're dealing with it in the other Americans at Arena Stage. They're the family,
Right,
the
right, right,
stuff that's under the surface. You know what I mean?
right,
To steal it from.
right,
And
right. The other Americans, the families trying to bury it under, but they can't. There's no way you can. Sometimes when one of your children is crying out for help and you don't see it, that's the problem. It's like a lot of kids in America and a lot of young people are saying they're having a problem and nobody listens, nobody hears them, and
yeah,
and that's why we're experiencing such high rates of suicide in America.
yeah, yeah. But well, it's yeah, to bring it down to a serious topic. Yeah, I mean, it is pressure, like a drip, drip, drip. And it's
Right.
and thanks to works like yours, we're trying to figure out how to work through it. But you'd work, by the way, you had worked with Lynn before, right? Like right shortly after Hamilton, you did like a hurricane relief thing with him, right? For
Yes,
Puerto
yes. I
Rico.
mean,
Yeah.
I loved how he's so political and so pro Latino at the same time.
Yeah.
And he's incredible. He's half Puerto Rican, half Mexican,
Not to
New
mention his
Yorker.
flow. His flow is in
Wow.
his
So
phrasing
when
and
he
stuff.
did that Hamilton for Barack Obama, it was my hair stood
Oh,
up.
the poetry jam
I,
at the White House.
yes,
That
it
was
was one of the
before they
most
even made him.
electric.
He was just workshopping it.
Yeah, it was electric, bro. It was one of those electric performances I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I was brought to tears and joy all at
Yeah,
once.
because he's just standing there at the White House, and none of us knew what this was yet. And shout out director Thomas Kail from the DC
Oh
area.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sidwell friends,
absolutely.
yeah. But and he gets up there, and Lynn is like, I've asked Lynn about this, and Lynn's like,
Woo!
how does a bastard orphan son of and you could just see Barack like, whoa.
Oh shit, do it, do it.
And I should say, immigrants, we get the job done, right? That's
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
keep weaving our theme in there. Uh, all right. Well, I know we're sort of up against the clock, so I do want to at least ask you about some of the your TV stuff. Obviously, Waco Emmy nomination for Paramount Network, and then especially Ava DuVernay, another genius filmmaker you've got
Wow.
to work with for When They See Us on Netflix. All about the
Yes.
Central Park Five, and that's back in the consciousness again with the
Mm-hmm.
current.
Because they're suing Trump for defamation.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it was, the Central Park Five, or When They See Us, the one I did with Ava DuVernay. Now they're the exonerated five, but they
yeah.
were just teenagers,
Mhm.
four black teenagers and one Latino teenager. And they happened to be in Central Park at the wrong time. And even though the DNA came of, it wasn't the DNA came that it wasn't them. They still prosecuted them because they got confessions out of them because they forced these confessions out of these guys. Which the lesson is, no matter what you think, don't ever, wait for a lawyer. Don't
Right.
confess. Don't say whatever they want you to say to get you home.
And he took out a full page ad, right? In the Times.
Asking for the
Trump did.
execution,
Yeah.
asking for these teenagers' execution,
Yeah.
and he still won't now because he never backs down from being wrong. He never knows how to say, "I'm sorry, I was wrong."
No.
Can't you see when he trips up and he makes all those mental word salads? He never like, "I made a mistake." Oh no, never corrects himself. He still goes forward with the bizarro lines that he makes up.
Double down, triple down, quadruple down.
Mm-hmm.
Never admit fault. That's how he
Right, right.
charged
Never
forward.
admit mistakes.
Yeah.
Never say you're sorry, which is the worst way to move through life.
Yep. No. And again, I respect certain Republicans and Democrats at principle, but I got to throw my disclaimer. But this guy, it was just so obvious from the birth certificate stuff from the beginning. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like I remember that one weekend, Obama actually drops the birth certificate. That was on a Friday. They roasted Trump on a
Right,
Saturday at the Correspondents' Dinner, and Sunday he killed Bin Laden. To me, that
right,
crystallized it,
right,
like of what's
right,
important
right.
and then what the crap you're saying. Anyway, well, I mean, I know you got the PBS series as well, the
Yeah.
American History, Untold History of Latinos. You're everywhere. Let me just mention the others. Tony Nob for Sexaholics. Best Play Nom, again, Tony Nob for Latin History for Morons, and you won a special Tony Award. So your Broadway credentials are there, setting you up for this show at Arena Stage. Let's bring it home with Arena Stage. The other Americans before we run. Invite listeners to come out. If you enjoyed this conversation, why should they come out to Arena?
Oh yeah, come and see this the next American classic. I worked my ass off, and the audiences are flipping out. Don't miss it. I think you'll do yourself a great disservice if you miss.
Is this going to be the first of many more you're going to keep writing at Arena?
Not many more, but maybe a few more.
Well,
this took 5 years to craft.
Not a full-on August Wilson 10-play cycle, but
No,
a few. There'll be a few.
Yeah, there'll be a few.
Hey, it was awesome chopping up with you. I can talk to you all day. You're the best, man.
So are you, brother. Much love.
Thanks so much.
Peace.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.